You've likely seen the headlines, right? Felt that tremor of concern in the news about the recent really powerful earthquakes that have shaken Japan.
Yeah, absolutely impossible to miss.
But what if I told you that for many people, these aren't just, geological events? What if they're raising this profound, maybe even ancient question? Could these events be linked to prophecies? From the Bible, specifically thinking about the book of Revelations, pretty dramatic foretelling of 4 great earthquakes.
It's a connection people often make, especially with Revelation.
And it's an absolutely natural, I think, a deeply human reaction to feel that jolt of anxiety when significant natural disasters hit, particularly when they seem to touch upon, well, deeply held beliefs or maybe worries about the future of our world.
Yeah, it taps into something fundamental, doesn't it? Our sense of stability, what we think is permanent.
So this brings us to a really crucial question, one that I know many are grappling with right now. Is the recent seismic activity in Japan, is it truly a signal, a sign of those end-time great earthquakes prophesied in the Bible?
That's the big question on the table.
Well, that's precisely what we're going to unpack in this deep dive. Our mission today is really to analyze the sources you've shared with us, address this core question head-on, and hopefully provide you with a clear, informed, and nuanced understanding.
Cutting through some of the noise.
Exactly. We'll delve into the connections, starting from the Gospel's foretellings of more general signs, and then moving to Revelation's much more specific, detailed, and frankly cataclysmic earthquake prophecies.
Big difference there.
Huge difference. We'll meticulously analyze the evidence, not just to throw information at you, but to help you gain knowledge quickly, thoroughly, offering multiple perspectives and maybe those aha moments that make complex topics really stick.
Yeah.
All without, overwhelming you.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How throughout human history, these major natural events like powerful earthquakes, they've just consistently prompted humanity to look beyond the immediate physical destruction and ask these deeper questions about spiritual or maybe prophetic significance. It seems to be a really deep-seated impulse within us.
It's like a coping mechanism or something more.
Perhaps both. Maybe a way to cope with or contextualize something so overwhelmingly powerful, so seemingly uncontrollable. In the vivid, really intense, dramatic descriptions of seismic activity you find in the book of Revelation in particular, they seem to act as this powerful catalyst for exactly those kinds of inquiries, often igniting discussions about the end times, about humanity's ultimate fate. People naturally seek meaning, I think, and connection when they're confronted with forces of such immense power.
That's a crucial point. This isn't just about geology class, is it? It's about our enduring human quest for meaning, for understanding our place.
Exactly.
So to really get a handle on this phenomenon, we need to first examine how it's actually portrayed in the biblical texts themselves. When we look at earthquakes in Scripture, especially in the context of end-time prophecies, we seem to encounter, distinct categories.
That's a good way to put it. Categories.
If we kick things off with the Gospels, specifically passages like Matthew 24 and Luke 21, we find Jesus speaking to his disciples. He's talking about the signs that would precede his return and, the culmination of the age.
Olivet discourse, yeah.
And he mentions earthquakes in various places. Now, what's critically important to grasp here, I think, is that these are presented as more like general signs or maybe general omens of the last days.
Right. Not the sign, but a sign. Part of a pattern.
Exactly. They're part of this broader list of widespread phenomena, right?
Yeah.
Appearing alongside things like famines, pestilence, even rumors of wars. It's a whole package deal almost.
Yeah, exactly right. These gospel accounts, they really serve as a foundational understanding. They describe what Jesus actually referred to as the beginning of birth pangs.
Birth pangs. That's evocative.
It really is. And that analogy is key. Just as birth pangs, increase in frequency and intensity leading up to the birth, these signs, including earthquakes, Jesus indicated they would become more common, perhaps more severe, as history progresses toward its culmination.
So an escalation over time.
An escalation. But importantly, they are not the end itself. They are widespread occurrences, indicators that we're living in a significant period, yes, one leading up to the final events. Think of it as a general acceleration of various natural and societal phenomena.
Okay.
They're part of a broad brushstroke painting of a period marked by increasing instability and distress across the globe. An undeniable part of the global landscape as history moves forward. This context is absolutely vital because it establishes a baseline.
A baseline expectation almost.
Precisely. Earthquakes are prophesied, yes. But initially, they're presented as these general signs, not singular cataclysmic world-ending events. That comes later.
And this leads us perfectly to where the narrative takes a profoundly different turn, doesn't it? When we transition from the Gospels to the book of Revelation. Wow! The scale, the specificity, the sheer dramatic impact of the earthquakes described there become fundamentally, almost, incomprehensibly different.
Yeah, it's night and day.
It's like moving from a general weather advisory, expect increasing storms, to suddenly seeing a detailed, real-time tracking map of some kind of apocalyptic superstorm that literally reshapes continents.
That's a good analogy. The imagery in Revelation is, it's breathtakingly powerful. And clearly on an entirely different magnitude. Let's maybe consider the earthquake described after the opening of the sixth seal. That's in Revelation chapter 6, verse 12.
Okay, the sixth seal earthquake.
This is far beyond a localized tremor, or even what we'd call a major regional disaster today. The text depicts a cosmic disruption. Truly immense scale.
How so?
It states, "The sun turned black, like sackcloth made of goat hair. The whole moon turned blood red, and the stars in the sky fell to earth as figs drop from a fig tree when shaken by strong wind."
Wow. Sun black, moon blood red, stars falling.
Imagine the sheer terror, but also maybe the awe of witnessing an event like that. The very fabric of the heavens seems to be unraveling.
Yeah.
It goes on. The heavens receded like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place.
Every mountain and island removed. That's planetary scale.
Exactly. This isn't just a geological event. It's presented as an astronomical and existential one. Something disrupting the fundamental natural order of the cosmos itself. It implies a total rearrangement, not just of land masses, but of the very heavens. A monumental, globally impactful event altering the fundamental appearance of our sky and our Earth.
That's truly chilling to even try and imagine a global cosmic unmaking. It sounds like something from, mythology, yet it's right there in prophetic scripture. But it doesn't stop there, does it? The seventh bowl earthquake, which is detailed in Revelation chapter 16, verse 18, that escalates the concept even further to an unprecedented, maybe ultimate magnitude.
Precisely. That event is explicitly described as the greatest earthquake in human history, such a mighty earthquake that there has never been one like it since mankind has been on Earth.
The greatest ever. That's quite a statement.
Think about that phrase for a moment. The greatest ever experienced by humanity. Its destructive power is described as so absolute that it causes every island to vanish and the mountains to be leveled.
Islands vanish, mountains leveled. Again, that scale is just mind-boggling.
This isn't merely a rearrangement of land masses, like perhaps implied in the sixth seal.
Yeah.
This sounds like complete obliteration, a geological reset on a global scale. It signifies a complete, irreversible transformation of the Earth's geography.
A final, definitive geological judgment.
That's how it's presented. As a singular, ultimate geological upheaval, unlike anything humanity has ever experienced or could possibly imagine, it literally reshapes the entire planet.
Wow, okay. Every island to vanish and the mountains to be leveled. That implies an energy release that just defies our current understanding of geology, surely.
It certainly seems to.
And Revelation doesn't just mention these two massive ones, right? There are others described too, each with its own specific context and timing in the narrative.
That's correct. The text also describes a powerful earthquake occurring after the two witnesses are resurrected. That's in Revelation chapter 11, verse 13.
The two witnesses earthquake, what's significant about that one?
Well, that event is significant because it's directly tied to a specific miraculous resurrection event. And it leads, according to the text, to the death of 7,000 people. And the survivors explicitly give glory to God. This seems to highlight its unique, non-random, and divinely orchestrated nature.
So purpose-driven, not just a natural disaster.
That's the implication. And then there's another mention of a powerful earthquake that precedes the fall of the symbolic city, Babylon the Great. That's in Revelation chapter 16, verse 20, right around the same time as the seventh bowl judgment.
Okay.
This indicates a series of incredibly impactful seismic events, each playing its own specific role in the unfolding prophetic narrative. They seem to serve as signs of divine judgment, or perhaps catalysts for major shifts in the end-time sequence, not just general occurrences like we see in the Gospels.
Right, so pulling this all together, the fundamental distinction when we consider the full biblical picture seems absolutely crucial.
It really is.
The earthquakes mentioned in the Gospels, Matthew 24, Luke 21, they're those general signs indicative of a broader period, part of the birth pangs, that acceleration of natural and societal distress. widespread, but not necessarily singular, definitive, end-bringing events.
Correct. Stage setting, perhaps.
Whereas Revelation's earthquakes, they're presented as decisive, cataclysmic events tied to specific transformative moments in that prophetic timeline. Unprecedented in scale, global in impact, and directly linked to specific divine judgments or pivotal shifts.
Exactly. And this distinction is vital because it really challenges a purely literal, one-to-one interpretation of every major earthquake we experience today as a direct fulfillment of Revelation.
Meaning not every big quake is one of those quakes.
Precisely. The Revelation earthquakes seem to be part of a much larger, highly symbolic narrative of the end, rather than necessarily a direct, literal prediction of every single significant earthquake that occurs throughout history, or even leading up to the end.
Okay, that distinction really helps clarify the biblical context and the different roles these prophecies seem to play. But let's bring this back to the present moment, to what people are seeing and feeling right now.
Yep.
We've all seen the news, the images, the reports about the recent Noto Peninsula earthquake, and also those ongoing Takara Islands, swarm quakes in Japan. These are very real, incredibly impactful events happening right now. From a scientific perspective, what are we supposed to make of these?
Right, moving from prophecy to geology. From a scientific standpoint, it's both fascinating and absolutely crucial to understand that the current seismic activity we're seeing, including these recent events in Japan, is predominantly understood and explained by well-established scientific principles, primarily plate tectonics and geological activity.
Plate tectonics. Okay, basics first.
Sure. Japan, for instance, sits squarely on what's called the Pacific Ring of Fire. You've probably heard of it.
Yeah, most active earthquake zone on the planet, right?
Exactly. It's this huge horseshoe-shaped belt that circles the Pacific Ocean, and it's where several major tectonic plates, these massive slabs of the Earth's crust, meet and constantly interact. In Japan's case, you have the Pacific Plate, the Philippine Sea Plate, the Eurasian Plate, and the North American Plate, all converging right there. It's geologically very complex.
So it's not just random bad luck, it's a direct consequence of Japan's specific geological location. It's basically earthquake territory.
Precisely. The Pacific Plate, for example, is constantly subducting. That means it's sliding beneath the plates that Japan actually sits on. Now, this process isn't smooth like butter. It causes immense stress to build up along the fault lines, the cracks between these plates.
Like stretching a rubber band further and further.
That's a good analogy. When this built-up stress overcomes the friction holding the plates together, it gets released suddenly. That release is in the form of seismic waves, energy traveling through the Earth, which we experience on the surface as earthquakes.
And the recent ones in Japan fit this model.
Perfectly. The Noto Peninsula earthquake, for instance, was a magnitude 7.6 event that was caused by what's called thrust faulting on a shallow fault, which is very typical for subduction zone environments like Japan. The Takara Island swarm quakes are a slightly different phenomenon, often linked more to volcanic activity or the movement of magma beneath the surface, but still entirely within the realm of predictable, understandable geological processes.
Okay, so these are natural phenomena, observable, measurable, with clear geological causes. Unlike, perhaps, the cosmic disruptions and planet reshaping events we were just discussing from Revelation.
Exactly, that's a key difference.
And we have tools now, right? We can monitor this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. We have incredibly advanced instrumentation. Sophisticated seismographs detect the faintest tremors, GPS networks track ground movements with millimeter precision, satellite imagery like INSAR can map surface deformation over large areas. We can model the stresses building up in the Earth's crust.
But we still can't predict the exact timing, can we? That's the holy grail, isn't it?
That remains elusive, yes. The complexity of fault systems, how they interact, the precise trigger points that's still beyond our predictive capability for specific times and dates. However, our understanding of why earthquakes occur, where they're most likely to happen, and their general characteristics like magnitude ranges for certain faults, that understanding has advanced dramatically.
So we know the where and the why, just not the precise when.
Broadly speaking, yes. The earthquakes we experience today, even the devastating ones, are fundamentally part of the Earth's ongoing geological processes. They're driven by the slow but absolutely relentless movement of these massive tectonic plates slipping, colliding, separating, releasing that accumulated energy. These involve forces beyond our human comprehension in a practical sense, sure, but forces that are still operating within the known boundaries of physical science.
Okay, so given all that scientific understanding, when we compare the scale of these current scientifically explain events, even a powerful 7.6 magnitude quake like Noto, when we compare that to the prophesied cataclysms back in Revelation, what's the verdict? Is there a significant discrepancy in magnitude? Is it even comparable?
Oh, absolutely. The discrepancy isn't just significant. It's astronomical. It's orders of magnitude
That's
beyond.
normal. Okay.
Well, the recent earthquakes in Japan have been locally devastating, causing immense damage to infrastructure, tragically displacing communities, taking lives. Their scale and destructive power are fundamentally different from the kinds of global cataclysms depicted in Revelation.
How so, specifically?
Well, a magnitude 7.6 earthquake, while immense by human standards, is still fundamentally a localized or regional event on a global scale. It creates widespread destruction within that region, yes, but it doesn't cause islands to disappear or mountains to vanish across the entire planet, as described in Revelation.
Right. It's hard to even wrap our minds around what islands disappearing actually means geologically.
Indeed. I mean, to put it into perspective, the largest earthquake ever scientifically recorded was a magnitude 9.5 in Chile back in 1960, an absolutely monstrous quake.
9.5, wow.
And while it caused horrific devastation locally and triggered tsunamis that affected shorelines thousands of miles away, even that event did not cause continents to rearrange or islands to completely vanish off the map.
So even our biggest recorded quake doesn't match Revelation's description.
Not even close. The biblical prophecies, particularly that seventh bowl earthquake in Revelation 16.18, the greatest earthquake in human history, describes an entirely different order of magnitude, something that literally reshapes the entire planet, not just a region. The scale where every island vanishes and mountains are leveled, that transcends anything recorded in geological history or predicted by our current scientific models of plate tectonics.
So it's not just bigger, it's different in kind.
Exactly. It's a qualitative difference, not just quantitative. It implies a force or a process that could fundamentally alter the Earth's crust in a way we simply cannot explain with current geological understanding. It sounds like, as you said earlier, a planetary unmaking, or at least a radical remaking.
Okay. So based on the current evidence, the scientific understanding, and this expert analysis, how should we interpret modern seismic activity? Like what we're seeing in Japan right now, in relation to these biblical prophecies. Where do these real-world events fit into the picture, if at all?
Well, based on the current evidence, and especially keeping in mind that crucial distinction we discussed between the general signs in the Gospels and the specific cataclysms in Revelation.
Right.
These recent earthquakes are, I would say, more reasonably interpreted as fitting into that category of general signs mentioned in the Gospels. Indicative, perhaps, of the last days drawing nearer, fulfilling that prophecy of earthquakes in various places, but not directly fulfilling the specific, highly symbolic and definitive world-altering events described in Revelation.
So like seeing more frequent or maybe more intense tremors, which fits the birth pangs idea from the Gospels,
Yes, exactly.
rather than these singular, unprecedented, earth-shattering seismic events of Revelation itself.
That seems to be the most balanced interpretation based on the evidence.
Right.
It's like distinguishing between a pattern of increasing seismic activity globally, which could be seen as a general sign, versus the unique, singular, and globally transformative cataclysm described with very specific, dramatic details in Revelation.
Okay, so this reinforces the idea then that maybe those 4 great earthquakes in Revelation are likely perhaps more symbolic, or at least tied to much more decisive future cataclysmic events that are yet to occur.
That's a very strong possibility and a common interpretation. They might not be intended purely as geological phenomena in the way we understand them scientifically, but rather as profound moments of divine intervention or judgment that will fundamentally alter the world as we know it, going beyond even the most powerful natural disasters we currently comprehend.
Part of that larger, highly symbolic narrative of the end.
Precisely. Rather than a direct, literal prediction of every significant earthquake, you have to remember the language of Revelation is often apocalyptic literature. It's designed to convey profound spiritual truths through dramatic, often symbolic imagery. It might not always be intended for a purely literal scientific dissection.
So we need to consider the genre, the style of writing itself.
Absolutely. That's a common and important approach to understanding apocalyptic literature, looking for the deeper spiritual and theological meaning behind the vivid, sometimes terrifying descriptions.
Okay, this is making a lot of sense. It's building a really clear picture, moving from the biblical text itself to the scientific and theological context. But let's shift gears for just a moment. Because beyond all the geological analysis and the theological interpretation, there's a very, very human element to all of this, isn't there?
Absolutely. The fear is real.
Totally. When we hear news about earthquakes, especially ones as significant as those in Japan, it's just impossible not to feel a profound emotional response. I read a comment from one listener, actually, and it resonated so deeply with me. They wrote, "My heart also jumps like a chart."
Softly.
I think that just perfectly captures the anxiety, the jolt that so many of us feel. Is this feeling, is it normal? What does it say about us?
Oh, it's an absolutely natural, profoundly human reaction. Of course it is. When you're faced with the sheer, unpredictable power of nature, especially something as potentially devastating and sudden as an earthquake, it's completely normal to feel a deep sense of vulnerability, of fear, of anxiety.
It shakes our foundations, literally and figuratively.
Exactly. Our minds are, in a very basic way, hardwired to perceive threats. And a shaking earth. That's undeniably one of the most fundamental threats imaginable to our sense of safety, our stability, our feeling of control. So these feelings are not only valid, they really should be acknowledged, not dismissed or ignored.
They mean something.
They do. They're a testament to our innate survival instincts, certainly, but also maybe our capacity for empathy when we see others suffering, and definitely our awareness of our own fragility in the face of such immense forces.
Yeah.
When the very ground beneath our feet, which we just assume is the definition of stable, begins to move,
Yeah.
and it shakes us to our core.
So when our hearts are jumping like a chart, like that listener said, and we feel that surge of unease or maybe even real fear, what can we actually do for mental care? What sort of coping mechanisms or support can you suggest?
Okay, that's really important. For immediate action, right in that moment when you feel that surge of anxiety, try a simple yet actually profoundly powerful technique. Deep diaphragmatic breathing.
Belly breathing.
Exactly. Focus on slow, controlled inhalations, really feeling your abdomen rise. Maybe hold it for just a few seconds, and then exhale slowly, consciously allowing your body to release tension with the breath. It sounds simple, but it physically activates your parasympathetic nervous system.
The rest and digest system, right? Not fight or flight.
Precisely. It helps to calm your entire nervous system down. Now, alongside that, or maybe alternatively, consciously recall and visualize a safe space or situation in your mind.
Like a happy place.
Yeah, basically. It could be a comforting memory, a peaceful place you've actually visited, or even a totally imagined sanctuary. The key is to try and engage all your senses in that visualization. What does it look like? Sound like? Feel like? Smell like?
Make it vivid.
Make it vivid. Visualizing this can help ground you back in the present moment, create a sense of internal calm, even amidst external chaos, and provide a kind of mental escape valve. This act of intentional mindfulness really helps to disrupt that anxiety cycle and bring you back to a place of, hopefully, inner peace.
So a combination of physical grounding with the breath and mental grounding with visualization to manage those immediate surges of fear. That makes sense. What else is important? Maybe looking beyond that immediate moment, thinking longer term.
Crucially, I would say, don't try to face these feelings alone. It is absolutely vital to stress the importance of community and support. If you're feeling anxious about this stuff, share those anxieties. Talk to your family, your trusted friends, maybe people in your faith community if you have one.
Don't bottle it up.
Exactly. There's immense comfort and strength to be found just through discussion, maybe through prayer if that's meaningful for you, and simply knowing that you're not isolated in your fears. Sharing your feelings can, first of all, normalize them. You realize others feel the same way. It allows others to offer comfort, perspective, support.
Connection is key.
Human connection is such a powerful antidote to fear and isolation. It reminds us we're part of something larger than ourselves. And, building these support networks before a crisis hits is invaluable. They can provide a vital lifeline during times of uncertainty, offering emotional, spiritual, and sometimes even very practical support.
That's truly powerful advice, recognizing we're not meant to navigate these kinds of profound feelings in isolation. Okay, so moving from the emotional coping to the perhaps more practical side, does taking tangible action actually help with the anxiety? It feels a bit counterintuitive sometimes, to move towards the thing that scares you by, say, preparing for it.
It does seem counterintuitive, but absolutely yes. This raises a really important point about practical preparedness as an antidote to anxiety. Taking proactive steps can significantly shift your focus away from that abstract, maybe overwhelming free-floating fear, towards concrete, manageable actions.
Okay.
Instead of just dwelling on what might happen, you're focusing on what you can do right now to increase your safety and your readiness.
Like what kind of practical steps?
Well, for instance, suggesting practical steps like preparing emergency supplies, actually putting together a clearly organized go bag, having water, non-perishable food, a good first aid kit, copies of essential documents, any necessary medications ready to go.
What that basic?
The basics, but having them done. Or knowing evacuation routes, not just vaguely knowing, but actually identifying the best routes from your home, your workplace, your kids' school, maybe even practicing them with your family so it's automatic. Setting up disaster alerts on your phone or other devices, making sure you get timely warnings from official sources. That reduces the shock factor if something does happen.
So these aren't just practical steps for physical safety, they're also psychological tools.
Precisely. That's the key insight.
So the very act of preparing itself, not just the outcome of being prepared, is actually beneficial for your mental state.
Yeah.
It's the process that brings calm.
Exactly. Empowering yourself through action can very effectively reduce anxiety because it transforms what feels like a chaotic, uncontrollable threat into something you actually have a degree of control over. Even if you can't prevent the event itself, you feel more capable of navigating it, more resilient in the face of it.
Taking back some agency.
That's it. It reiterates that point we often hear. Action can calm anxiety. It takes that passive, sometimes paralyzing fear and transforms it into an active, empowering response. And if we connect this back to the overall structure of our deep dive today, this demonstrates perfectly how we move from understanding the core biblical text through the context of its scientific interpretation and its human impact, and then directly into practical, empowering application. This kind of holistic approach ensures that the knowledge isn't just theoretical, sitting in your head, but actually translates into tangible benefits for your well-being and your peace of mind.
That's a great example of how this deep dive is structured, really designed to help you gain knowledge quickly and thoroughly, moving from understanding the core text through its context and right into practical application. It's all about providing that actionable knowledge you can hopefully use immediately. Now, one of the things we truly love about the deep dive community is the insightful and sometimes just wonderfully witty comments we receive. It really shows how diverse perspectives can lighten the mood and offer new angles on even the most serious topics. It feels like a testament to the resilience and humor people have when facing uncertainty.
Indeed. It's always fascinating how humor often serves as such a powerful coping mechanism in difficult situations, doesn't it? A way to process the sometimes unfathomable. I saw one comment where someone, perhaps feeling a bit frustrated with the inherent unpredictability of seismic events, humorously joked, "It's hard to predict earthquakes with rhythm analysis."
Talks, rhythm analysis. I like that.
And another person, clearly someone familiar with financial markets, maybe listening while checking their portfolio, humorously asked, "Next time, please compare earthquake waves with MCD."
Laughs. Okay, for those wondering, MCD is a common abbreviation for a stock technical analysis indicator, the moving average convergence divergence. It's often used to spot trends and momentum in financial markets. So, yeah, a very clever play on words there, connecting the unpredictable waves of the earth to the sometimes equally unpredictable waves of the market.
Exactly.
It's a brilliant reminder, I think, that even in really serious discussions like this one, a bit of levity can provide a necessary release, foster connection, and maybe help us process overwhelming information.
And this kind of community interaction, it actually leads us nicely into a deeper reflection. Why do these massive natural phenomena, like earthquakes, often serve as such profound catalysts for spiritual introspection, for existential questioning? Beyond just the humor or the immediate fear, if we connect this to the bigger picture, there's a powerful historical and theological analogy that comes to mind.
Oh, where are you going with this?
Think about the profound event described at Mount Sinai in the book of Exodus. When God delivered the Ten Commandments to Moses, the Bible describes the mountain itself as trembling violently. It was accompanied by thunder, lightning, a thick cloud. Intense phenomena.
And theophany.
The appearance of God.
Exactly. And the Israelites, despite their immense fear, the text makes that clear, they also felt God's presence in that very trembling of the earth. It wasn't just a geological event for them. It was interpreted as a profound spiritual encounter, a moment of divine revelation wrapped in terrifying power.
So it's like a spiritual trembling of the earth, then. Something that prompts these fundamental questions about existence, about humanity's place in the grand scheme of things, whether it's the ancient Israelites back then or us today facing news from Japan.
Precisely. I think these events can shake us out of our daily complacency, can't they? They force us to confront our vulnerabilities, maybe ponder our purpose beyond the daily grind, the commute, the emails.
The bigger questions surface.
They can prompt us to ask what truly matters in life.
Hmm.
Or what does this event, this potential sign, mean for our future, for our spiritual journey? It's often a moment when the mundane just slips away and the profound comes into sharp, sometimes terrifying focus.
A reminder of forces greater than ourselves.
Absolutely. A reminder of forces far greater than ourselves, which can, I suppose, either lead towards despair and fear, or potentially towards a deeper search for meaning, for connection, for purpose. This is really where the intersection of physical reality and spiritual understanding truly converges, I think, pushing us beyond just the immediate disaster to contemplate the deeper currents of life, existence, and maybe our ultimate relationship with the divine, or even just the vastness of the cosmos itself.
That's a truly powerful way to frame it, highlighting that enduring human search for meaning, especially when we're faced with the overwhelming. And it brings us right back, actually, to our core methodology for this deep dive, doesn't it?
It does.
We started with the biblical text itself. We explored the idea of earthquakes in various places in the Gospels, and then those much more dramatic prophecies in Revelation.
Check text first.
Then we work to understand it within its proper context, distinguishing between those general signs of the times and the specific, maybe symbolic, cataclysmic events of the end.
Context is key.
And finally, we looked at how to translate that understanding into practical applications for our mental well-being, for our physical preparedness.
Text, context, application. That flow is really crucial, I believe, for any meaningful engagement with complex information like this.
So if we apply that flow directly here, understanding the text informs your interpretation.
Right, knowing the difference between gospel signs and revelation events.
And that interpretation should ideally lead to practical steps. So applying it here means recognizing, okay, earthquakes are mentioned as signs in the Gospels, part of the landscape of the times.
Yes.
And responding sensibly by implementing practical measures, like, as we discussed, setting up disaster alerts on your phone, maybe participating in emergency drills if they happen in your community or workplace, and definitely ensuring your family has a solid preparedness plan.
And importantly, this isn't about fostering fear. It's the opposite, really. It's about informed, proactive living that empowers you to face the realities of our world, including geological ones, with greater confidence and resilience.
Taking the insights from deep analysis.
And translating them into tangible, beneficial actions in your daily life. That's the goal.
It's about being prepared, isn't it? Both mentally and practically. It's about empowering yourself through knowledge and action, recognizing that even when facing these vast, seemingly uncontrollable forces, we still have agency. We have choices in how we respond. This whole process, this structure, is crucial for absorbing and actually using this information in a way that truly benefits you.
Okay. So after meticulously analyzing all the evidence we've just unpacked, I mean, we've gone from ancient prophecies to modern seismology, from deep human emotion to witty community wisdom.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. Let's circle back and directly address our core question for this deep dive. Is the recent Japanese earthquake one of those 4 great earthquakes specifically prophesied in the book of Revelation?
Right. The bottom line. Based on the comprehensive evidence we've just unpacked, considering both the scientific realities and the theological nuances, the answer, I would have to say, is closer to false. Closer to false. Okay, that's a pretty direct verdict. Can you just quickly elaborate again on why it's so difficult to directly equate these recent real geological events with those specific dramatic revelation prophecies, beyond just the obvious difference in scale we discussed?
Sure. It's difficult primarily because the scale, yes, but also the scope and the very specific cosmic and geographical transformations described in Revelation are just vastly, fundamentally beyond what we've witnessed, even the most powerful modern earthquakes recorded.
It's the unique details in Revelation.
Exactly. Revelation's descriptions point to unprecedented, globally transformative cataclysms. Things like islands disappearing entirely, mountains vanishing completely, the very sky being rolled up like a scroll, affecting the sun, the moon, the stars. These aren't just described as seismic events, they're presented as cosmic upheavals that signify a complete restructuring of the Earth and its relationship with the heavens.
A different category of event altogether.
Completely. While the recent earthquakes are devastating locally, and they certainly align with that general prophecy of earthquakes in various places mentioned in the Gospels as signs pointing toward the last days, they simply do not match the unique, highly symbolic and definitive geological and cosmic upheavals described with such specific detail and revelation.
Different orders of magnitude, different roles in the prophetic story, different kinds of global impact.
Precisely. They seem to represent a qualitative shift in reality within the revelation narrative, not merely a quantitative increase in the seismic activity we currently understand or experience.
Okay, so the verdict is closer to false for that direct fulfillment of the specific revelation prophecies. However, and you flagged this earlier, and I think it's truly important, this doesn't mean we can just dismiss earthquakes, breathe a sigh of relief, and feel safe, right?
Precisely. That is the absolutely crucial caveat here. It doesn't mean we can just relax and assume, oh, well, that wasn't the big one, so we're fine. Earthquakes are an ever-present geological reality. They can and they will occur at any time, often without warning, anywhere in the world, especially in active zones like the Ring of Fire.
So constant vigilance and preparedness are still essential.
Absolutely essential. The Earth's tectonic plates are always in motion. They're constantly building up immense stresses that will, inevitably, be released somewhere. So regardless of any prophetic interpretation, the cold, hard scientific reality is that significant seismic activity is ongoing, and significant, locally devastating earthquakes will continue to occur. Our preparedness shouldn't just be for some prophesied singular future event. It needs to be for the enduring geological reality that impacts millions of lives right now.
So our vigilance should be based on scientific understanding and practical wisdom, not just waiting for a specific interpretation of an eschatological and end times timeline.
Well said.
And this leads us to consider something maybe beyond just the immediate physical preparedness and the scientific reality. What about the broader socioeconomic ramifications of major disasters like these? Because the impact certainly doesn't end when the ground stops shaking, does it? It creates these long-term ripple effects through entire economies.
That's right. If we connect this to the bigger picture again, it's vital to broaden our lens beyond just the immediate physical safety aspect to the wider socioeconomic impact. When a significant earthquake or really any large-scale natural disaster occurs, the massive recovery and rebuilding efforts that inevitably follow bring certain industry sectors into sharp, often unexpected focus.
It's a huge undertaking.
It's a monumental undertaking.
Recovery requires.
It requires an incredible mobilization of resources, of labor, of technology, of capital, and this inevitably creates significant economic ripple effects. Sometimes positive, frankly, for specific industries involved in the rebuilding effort, and sometimes deeply negative for those directly impacted by the destruction to impoverished agriculture or tourism in the affected regions.
Okay, so which types of industries typically benefit or at least see significantly increased activity and investment during and after events like major earthquakes? Can you give us some examples of these economic shifts?
Certainly. First off, you almost always have the insurance sector. They are immediately on the front lines, right? Processing countless claims, facilitating critical recovery funds to individuals and businesses. Think of major global insurers who underwrite property and casualty risks, companies like, say, Allstate, ALL, Travelers, TRV, Chubb, CB. Their operations become absolutely central to the initial financial response.
Okay, insurance first. Then what? The actual rebuilding.
Exactly. Then there's construction materials and engineering. Just imagine the sheer volume of concrete, steel, timber, lumber, other building supplies needed for reconstruction. Not just rebuilding, but often rebuilding better, to higher standards. And the engineering expertise required to design and execute that, especially for infrastructure like roads, bridges, utilities. Companies producing heavy equipment like Caterpillar, CAT, engineering and construction firms like Jacobs, J, or AECOM, ACM, aggregate suppliers like Vulcan Materials, VMC, or Martin Marietta, MLM, even technology companies involved in construction like Trimble, TRMB, or Teledyne, TDY, they all see a surge in demand.
Makes sense. A huge demand for the physical stuff and the know-how. What about beyond the obvious construction side? Any more high-tech or specialized services that come into play?
Yes, absolutely. We'd likely see a significant increase in demand for disaster monitoring and exploration technologies. Knowing precisely where to focus relief efforts, accurately assessing the damage, maybe even monitoring aftershocks or related geological hazards becomes crucial. This could involve companies working in areas like geospatial intelligence or geophysical services, perhaps firms like Geoservices, GOS, or ION Geophysical, IO, depending on the specific needs.
Okay, monitoring tech. What else?
Then energy services companies often become essential, ensuring power infrastructure can be quickly restored, or in many cases, temporary power solutions can be rapidly deployed to support recovery hubs, hospitals, rebuilding efforts. Think companies like Baker Hughes, BKR, or Schlumberger SLB, though the specific players depend heavily on the region and type of infrastructure needed.
Got it. Power is critical.
Absolutely. And finally, perhaps most broadly, you have the whole ecosystem around risk management, analysis, and safety equipment. This includes firms that specialize in modeling future risks and helping communities develop mitigation strategies like Verisk Analytics, VRSK, or CoreLogic, CLGX. It also includes companies providing essential protective gear and safety solutions for first responders and recovery workers. Think companies like Amatec, AME, Leidos, LDS, or MSA Safety, MSA. It's a really comprehensive ecosystem of industries that get engaged during these recovery phases.
Wow, that's quite a list. It really paints a picture of a whole economic ecosystem springing into action.
It does. And these sectors often attract significant capital flows as the economy adapts to the new post-disaster landscape.
So it's clear that while these events are undeniably devastating on a human level, they also fundamentally shift economic landscapes. And it sounds like astute investors often pay very close attention to the performance and future prospects of companies within exactly these sectors: insurance, construction, engineering, tech, safety, both during and especially after such events. It's a stark reminder of the multifaceted impact of natural disasters reaching far, far beyond the initial tremor.
Precisely. It's a very pragmatic, maybe even sobering aspect of these events that certainly warrants close observation from an economic perspective as capital naturally flows towards the areas of most immediate need and also toward long-term recovery and resilience building.
And just on that note, for those of you who are keenly interested in these market dynamics, maybe understanding which sectors and specific companies become vital in the wake of such events, we're actually preparing to publish a dedicated post very soon on our website.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it will delve specifically into earthquake-related stocks and try to highlight those showing particularly rhythmic or interesting trends, as perhaps some of our witty commenters might put it. So make sure you visit our website, basitchurch.co.kr, to check out this upcoming in-depth analysis.
That promises to be a very insightful look for those interested in the economic ripple effects of these significant events. It has a really practical dimension to this whole complex topic.
We think so too. Well, goodness, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? From ancient prophecies and their really nuanced interpretations to modern seismology, the profound human emotional response to uncertainty, and even the intricate dance of the stock market in recovery.
A true deep dive.
Indeed. As we wrap up, perhaps what's truly important here isn't precisely predicting the exact timing of prophecies or maybe feeling paralyzed by potential future events, but rather focusing on what we learn from such events, both geological and maybe even prophetic, and how we choose to prepare ourselves, mind, body, and spirit.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how facing these immense natural forces often brings us face to face with a deeper truth, perhaps, about humanity itself. The source material we've drawn from for this discussion actually offers a really profound piece of wisdom that resonates deeply here. It urges us to consider our internal response.
What does it say?
It says, evil doesn't generate itself. Rather, it grows from human helplessness and despair. Don't let despair grow within you.
Wow. Don't let despair grow within you. That hits hard.
It does, and it raises, I think, an important question for each of us listening. How do we actively cultivate resilience, cultivate hope, cultivate proactive engagement, even when faced with uncertainty and sometimes overwhelming events? How do we prevent those seeds of despair from taking root inside us?
It feels like a call to proactive living, doesn't it? To consciously choose action over apathy, preparation over panic, and ultimately hope over helplessness. It sounds like it's about building not just physical resilience, through the emergency kits and the evacuation plans we talked about, but also building mental and perhaps spiritual fortitude, strengthening our inner resolve to face whatever comes with courage and with purpose.
Indeed. It's about understanding that while some external events are entirely beyond our control, our response to them, our internal state, our commitment to helping ourselves and supporting others, that is entirely within our power. And that choice, perhaps, is the most profound one we can make every day.
A powerful thought to end on. So thinking ahead, will the signs or phenomena, whether they're biblical, scientific, socioeconomic, maybe something else entirely, what would you like us to explore in our next deep dive? Please share your thoughts and your questions in the comments section on our website. Your input genuinely helps us decide what crucial knowledge to unpack next time.
We look forward to hearing from you.
That concludes our deep dive for today. Thank you so much for joining us.